what would you say if I said that Tiger Woods and Bobby Jones actually moved and powered their swing the same way? In other words, they swung the golf club the same way. Would you think that's crazy? Well, let's take a look. Now, looking at the top of the backswing, they obviously look quite different. Bobby had this classic huge hip turn, and Tiger obviously makes this much more compact move that we're familiar with these days with most golfers. Now, does this change how you would power the golf swing? Well, the only way to really know is you look at what's happening in the downswing, and that's what we're going to look at now. Because as you start looking at this, I think you'll be pretty surprised that when the dynamics of the swing really begin to take over, where you're no longer just fabricating something happening in the backswing, but physics are taking over, the speed is happening, the biomechanics are taking over, you're going to be surprised at how similar their golf swings really were. So let's take a look. So now as we get about halfway down, what do you see? I see more similarities than dissimilarities, that's for sure. So coming from this, Bobby took the club way inside, had a very quiet arms takeaway, big hip turn, kind of flattish and across the line and John Daly-esque length almost in the backswing. But then when stuff really starts to matter, look at how similar they are. In other words, what they're showing here is that the way that they're powering the downswings, that's when rubber meets the road. You can make yourself look a certain way in the backswing, but when you start adding speed to it, that's when you're going to know whether or not somebody really knows how to power their swing and how to move their hips versus somebody that doesn't. And so now when you look at these two greats, and between these guys, you've got 13 major wins by the time he was 28 and 15 major wins on the right with Tiger. So these guys kind of knew what they were doing. And take a look as we keep advancing down in the downswing. So we'll get the club shaft about parallel, hand just outside the pocket there. Let's see where we're at with Tiger. Oh, wow. Isn't that wild? Look at how similar they are in terms of how much they've rotated. They're both up almost in identical positions with the right knee, the right foot, the pelvis, the axis tilt, the shoulder position, the head position, the club position, the arm position. It's almost identical. Isn't that wild? As we get even closer into impact, you're going to see even more similarities. Right as we get just about the hands in front of the thigh, take a look. Now we'll move them right down into impact. And as you see Tiger, obviously there's slight differences here for obvious reasons. One, they didn't make tees this big when Bobby Jones was a golfer, and they certainly had never contemplated a driver head this big. So now, obviously, we know we're creating different angles of attack and so on, so that's where you can start to see a lot more secondary tilt in Tiger's swing. But overall, if you looked at just their core movements, how they're powering their swing, you can't argue that they're incredibly similar, even though these swings are maybe 100 years apart. So how much has the golf swing really changed in 100 years? Well, from the two of the greatest golfers of all time, in terms of swing mechanics and how they're motoring their golf swing, not the, I'm taking the club inside here or this, whatever, all that stuff really doesn't matter. It's really when the rubber meets the road is how we're powering the golf swing. And as you see, this is the stuff that you can't control or fake in your golf swing. If you release the club properly, you're going to end up in these positions. If you're moving in a way that's going to allow you to release the club properly, you're going to end up in these positions. These are not things that you can fabricate. Look at the extension in the right arm, the right shoulder staying back, the head staying back. There's so much more width in the follow-through in these two golfers' swings. And as we keep moving them up, the similarities are still there all the way almost completely into the follow-through. It's wild how similar Bobby Jones's golf swing was. Even though when you look at it again, if you just looked at it from a few different angles, if we looked at from down the line especially, you'll see just how extremely inside Bobby took the club back. So you would look at his swing and Tiger's swing. Look at this. This is a Ray Floyd-esque, way inside. Right arm folding right away, right wrist folding right away. He's trying to keep his arms and hands very, very relaxed. Bobby talked about that a lot. He's really wanting those hips to initiate everything, and you can see that's why he's making such a big turn, because he fires those hips to bring the club and arms down. You can see his arms are still very quiet, right arm still bent coming into impact. So you would look at this on the surface and say, oh, these guys, Tiger Woods surely doesn't swing like Bobby Jones. But again, when we start adding speed and power, they're actually way more similar than dissimilar. And another thing I think is interesting about his swing if you take a look at how he releases the club, I would love to know what you guys think about this. So when you watch his hands, look at the release. Now I think a lot of golf instructors these days would call that a flip. I call it a release. Now he's a little bit aggressive with that. His left wrist breaks down quite a bit, and who knows, there could be a lot of different things. Part of this, I think, is equipment related, and not necessarily the release in general per se, but the fact that he was playing with hickory shafts, he couldn't load the shaft very aggressively at the top of his swing, because just putting that much torque and stress on the shaft, it wouldn't rebound back, and he'd have a hard time squaring the face. It'd be very inconsistent. But this release is wildly different than what a lot of golfers teach today. He's actually fully aggressively letting that club release as hard as he can through the ball, because that's where all the speed is. But a lot of golfers nowadays are being taught to hold this off and just continue to rotate their body as hard as they can. But I think if you look at a lot of great players, you'll notice a couple different things. One, when they get down to this part of the swing, their lower body essentially stops moving, and it's all just wrist speed. And now if you think about it in terms of efficiency, this is as efficient and easy on the body as it gets. Your wrists are providing the speed, and again, a lot of people would call this a flip, but you realize this guy won 13 majors and retired at 28, is one of the greatest of all time. So he must have been doing something right. But you can see his hips completely are done moving, and it's all just that passive energy transfer into the arms and hands, and he just lets it go, lets that puppy fly. And you can actually see much of the same stuff in Tiger Woods' swing. If we move him, I have some up the line stuff, but if we just look at down the line here, you can see just how aggressively Tiger releases the club as well. Now, if we just kind of compare, again, the start of his swing, you're going to see the club definitely not going nearly inside like Bobby Jones did. Much more compact position, fewer moving parts in his swing. But his releasing the heck out of it. Look how close that club face is, how much it's rotated over 90 degrees already. Wrists fully released at this point. And you can look at Jack Nicklaus's swing, and you'll see much the same thing. So the three greatest major winners of all time, 18 with Jack, 15 with Tiger, and 13 with Bobby Jones in just a short period of time, all release the club this way. What do you guys think that is? I'm curious to hear your opinion. What do you think of the way the release is being taught by a lot of instructors today to hold that thing square and rotate. What do you guys think about that versus the three greatest major winners of all time?